following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Here on the Dean Martin Show tonight at 9 in color on Color 4, KJAC-TV studio.
Ralph Ramos reporting. Good evening, everyone. This is
the Steve Allen Show, Sunday over most of these NBC.
Good morning. This is Today.
Next, Glenn Earl and the weather.
From New York, here's Johnny.
Hello everyone, I'm Dana Malawson. A 50th anniversary is always a special occasion, whether it's a wedding anniversary, a 50-year high school reunion, or maybe even a 50th birthday. That's why we're very proud to be celebrating 50 years here at Channel 4. Now, not only does it mean a lot for us who work here at Channel 4, but I believe it's very important for anyone who has lived here in Southeast Texas. Now, that's because in one way or another, Channel 4 has been a part of everyone's lives. Now, over the next 60 minutes, we're going to be revisiting some of the early days here at Channel 4, drop in on some old friends, and reflect on 50 years of incredible news and entertainment. And like all good stories, it begins at the beginning. A variety of influences came together to set the stage for the creation of Channel 4. It was the 1950s, and times were good. A growing economy meant more jobs and more money to spend.
The refining industry here employed really thousands and thousands of persons to operate those facilities. Gulf Oil or Texaco would have 6,500 people on their payroll. Growing up in the Texas Golden Triangle was really a great place. It was middle America. It offered all the benefits of a major metropolitan area, and yet it had a small town feel. So it was a great place to be and a great place to grow up.
The 1950s also saw the rise of television's popularity. City by city, local TV stations were signing on for the first time because there simply was not enough bandwidth to fit more than a few TV signals into a given location. The Federal Communications Commission ruled that Southeast Texas would have only 3 TV channels. One was already on the air, and the other would become Channel 4. It cost a lot of money to pay the legal fees to get a broadcast license and to build a TV station. But eventually, 2 strong applicants for Channel 4 emerged. Jefferson Amusement Company, which ran movie theaters across Southeast Texas, and Port Arthur College, which operated one of the first broadcast schools in the nation. The college already owned radio station KPAC. The radio station had a large audience and many advertisers. Its popular announcers like George Crochet, Glenn Earl, and Gordon Baxter were household names in the 50s. Jefferson Amusement Company, led by dynamic entrepreneur Julius Gordon, was well connected in Hollywood. Gordon understood what was known then as showmanship, and Jefferson Amusement had the deep pockets necessary to build and run a TV station. Both organizations wanted to own Channel 4, but it took a compromise to finally get Channel 4 on the air.
There was a big fight for the license. Beaumont already had a television station, and the FCC, the way they worked it in those days, they divided it up. There was another channel available with the location to be in Port Arthur. And a lot of people applied for that. But the ones that wound up getting it was KPAC, the college, but they also owned a radio station. And that was the beginning of that deal. Then later they joined with Jefferson Amusement Company, and they wound up with a 50-50 deal with Jefferson Amusement Company having the management rights.
Channel 4 would take the call letters KPAC TV, named for radio station KPAC. It would be located in Port Arthur at 17th and Woodworth Boulevard in a building that was to have seen another use.
Jefferson Amusement Company had been started by Julius's father, and they owned every theater in East Texas. And I've forgotten the name of the other company, but anyhow, they decided they were going to build some movie theaters there. And they built that building. And it never opened as a movie theater. Julius saw to that. I guess he saw to it. They never opened anyway, regardless of what happened. And then he got the building and used it, converted it into television. It's a great big building, and to this day, if you go in there, you will find all the concrete still up in the front end of the unused end of that building where the balcony was going to be.
Facing a tight deadline to get the station on the air, workers went round the clock, installing complicated electronic equipment and building sets in the new studios.
I was employed before the station actually went on the air, and we were supposed to go on in September, and there were some technical problems. So we spent the next month, 6 weeks, building sets and keeping busy and rehearsing so it would be a little more smooth when we started.
Eventually, everything was in place, including a powerful transmitting tower located at Vidor. The switch was turned on October 27, 1957, and Channel 4 had been born.
I'm on my way to the star. Come along, leave your worries where they are. You didn't think I knew the lyrics, huh? It's like a lovely tune. Beware my foolish heart.
The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated stations from coast to coast present the new Tonight, starring Kjac Ch4, and it's all live from New York.
You know, this is an hour and 45 minutes a night, and I can't figure it out, really. It's a telethon, but I can't figure who it's for.
My brother was in a caravan in a parade down the middle of a big city, and by mistake, the driver turned off, went through the crowd, and then had to circle the block to tried then to come back into the crowd and into the way of march. And a policeman stopped him, put up his hand, and said, "You can't go any further." And Jack got up and said, "But I'm Senator Kennedy, I belong in the parade." And he said, "I don't care if you're Kjac Ch4, you're not going to get in there."
May I ask you, so that I don't look too naive, a tough question right off the bat?
And whether I'm a Democrat or Republican.
Viewers in Southeast Texas would finally get to see all of the stars in the NBC lineup. The earliest NBC shows were mostly variety hours and comedy.
You take the bucket and you put it under the cow's udder. Huh? You take the bucket and you put it under the cow's udder. The cow's udder what? Not udder what? The cow's udder. I take the bucket and I put it where? Under the cow's udder. The cow's udder what? Not udder.
But where Channel 4 really made its mark was with local programs that originated from its own TV studios. One of its first on-camera hosts was a young man named Tommy Vance. I had the opportunity to visit with Tommy and Channel 4 veteran Lee Ashworth. Tommy told me about his first job at the new Channel 4.
I was kind of new in the area, and I thought, I've got to get known somehow, some way. So I went to Julius Gordon, who was owner at the time, and said, I got an idea for a show, a theater show. Every other TV station has one. He said, oh, I don't know. I said, I'll sell it. I can sell it. So he decided, okay, and it was on Sunday night at 10:30. It was called Starlight Theater with Tommy Vance. And we had a big easy chair and a lamp and the whole suite setting and the music. And I would open and say, ladies and gentlemen, tonight you're probably going to see the worst movie you've ever seen in your whole life. It's maybe 100 years old, but who cares? It's either me here or Harry Hodge at the Sabine Tabernacle. So you can take your choice which one. And I got to tell you, Dana, the phones just lit up. Get him out of here. I mean, I was hated. I really was hated. It was great, though. And I got, there was a outfit, a Navy outfit in Orange that sent me 20 cents and a noose. And they said, either hang yourself or get the hell out of here. So I said to my audience, you really want me to go? Send me your dimes. I got like 3,000 dimes. And then if I would get a bad letter, I'd read it with their name, say, Susie Johnson, I hate you, you know, and then I'd go through the whole thing. Anyway, I accomplished what I wanted to do.
But Tommy's best-known Channel 4 creation was the teenage dance show Jive at 5. And Lee Ashworth was always there to help.
Yeah, I was generally known as Tom's sidekick and filled in the gap. I answered the mail, which was a ton of mail. We answered every letter we got. And we had, during the school year, we had school groups come on. Then in the summer, we had kids write in for tickets.
We had so much fun with the kids. They were really, really well behaved. They danced and we had like banana flips. Hostess Cupcakes was...
Coke was our big sponsor. They had a Hostess Cupcake.
The fair store. I mean, we had all these things. And what we would do is we would pick one couple every week. And I had like judges, and they'd say, okay, those two. And they would get all the prizes for that week. But at the end of the year, we would have those couples come back to vie for the grand prize, which was an automobile, one for each, used. We had no budget for...
Couldn't afford the new one quite.
So I'll never forget Dale and you have a picture, Blackwell and Dale.
Dale Harmon.
Dale Harmon
Yeah.
and Randy Blackwell, and they got in their cars and went about 8 miles, and they broke down.
I don't know if we provided road service.
No, I didn't have road service, but it was Roland Angel's father. He got so mad at Roland, he said, why would you do that to these kids? So we got them some good cars, and anyway, that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
That's the way live, local TV was back then, limited only by the imagination of creative people like Tommy Vance. He would become one of a local galaxy of stars that would soon include a wrestling promoter, a man dressed in black, and a young cowboy from Texarkana. Their stories when we come back. If you were a kid in the Golden Triangle between 1957 and 1975, you recognized that theme music. The Circle 4 Club was one of the longest-running kids shows in Texas television history. And it all started with a young announcer from Texarkana.
I was in Texarkana working at a TV station, and they needed a kiddie show MC because they had a national sponsor that wanted in that market. So they said, we'll make John the kiddie show guy. What do you want to be, a clown, an astronaut, or whatever? But they had a trade out with a local Western store, so I became Cowboy John. And I hated it at first, but it caught on. Then when the new station came in Channel 4, they hired me and came down here as Cowboy John. But that's how it got started.
In Southeast Texas, Cowboy John became an instant celebrity. Another young Channel 4 announcer named Johnny Stevens became his on-camera nemesis, still known to this day by those who remember him as Black Bart. Together, they introduced Southeast Texans to an amazing number of musicians and actors who stopped by the Channel 4 studios. And it was all on live TV. In fact, all local TV in those days was live. And that meant the TV crew was always hopping.
I think a lot of people today don't recognize the fact that in the days of early black and white television, even in this marketplace, people that were hired to work did multiple chores.
Oh, yes.
In other words, our directors were not just directors. Our cameramen were not just cameramen. Our staff artists didn't just draw posters, you know. And the people who were on the microphone very often had to take the role of several different people on broadcast. In other words, as I recall, I was hired to do a television weather spot, and I was replacing the local weatherman. Well, in those days, television wasn't they weren't the benefactors of people with fellows who were meteorologists. They were not people that had college educations in that area. I'm not about to try. And the weatherman who was stationed at the Jefferson County Airport sent the weather, and we were to interpret the weather verbatim. The only really artistic license we had was how we depicted it. And in those days, the weather was depicted by a huge blackboard. There was no green room. Right. You know, there was no go to green and go to some other overshot. Yeah. And so we had to actually put the weather on a blackboard. And we did a lot of hand rolling, you know, where things were done where you could not see what was happening behind the scene as we rolled little drums with numbers on them and things like that. Yeah. And so there were a lot of chores involved with trying to do the job, and you had to be all over the place all of the time.
So we would go from one side, we'd do a commercial and just swing the camera over and do it live. You just walk from the commercial right on into the live, like weather. Cowboy would go, or whoever was a weatherman would go next door and get some spare tires, put them up there, do a tire commercial, and then walk over and do the weather, right? Same. Light bulbs were incandescent, and so they'd blow a lot of times on the set, and we did a whole lot of cooking shows, as you can tell, but we did a whole lot of cooking shows, and those light bulbs blow on the food and everything else, we'd still go and try to eat it.
Cue cards were things that you had to cut up out of poster board.
Right.
And you had to write them yourself because nobody could understand what anybody else was writing.
Well,
you'd look at a cue card and say, Imogene who? Oh, imagine that.
Back in those days, everything was new, and we were new, and we were learning day by day, and we just had a ball because everything was live. You had to be there. You couldn't tape it and all that
True
stuff.
enough.
Coming to Beaumont, the omnipresence of Black Cowboy John, Jive at 5, the Circle 4 Club, the wrestling with Paul Bosch on Saturday afternoons, live in the studio. Later on, Bea Galliano and her husband would have the wrestling at the Sportatorium on Park Street there on Saturday night. But the acts that were going to wrestle on Saturday night came over and wrestled live in the Channel 4 studios. And we went down there a couple of times. It was awesome. I mean, people were just into it. You know, they had one gal down there with her knitting needles that she used to jab the wrestlers that she didn't like. And then, of course, they would come over and Paul Bosch would have them on Saturday night, guys like Bull Curry and Duke Kiamuka and some of the great famed wrestlers at that time. You'd see them right there in the studio. And, of course, this is all black and white.
And being on the air live led to more than a few problems for Cowboy John.
Dr. Pepper was a sponsor.
Yes.
And I had to drink a Dr. Pepper. I didn't like Dr. Pepper, so every day I'd go out to the Coke machine in the hall and with a Dr. Pepper bottle and pour Coke in it. And this little girl and her mother came out and she had to go to the restroom, so she watched me do that, and I didn't pay any attention. I'm doing the commercial, drinking the Coke, which is supposed to be a Dr. Pepper, and I feel this little pull on my pants. Says,
Cowboy John, that's not Dr. Pepper, that's a Coke. I saw you change that in the hall.
And I'm going,
You're nabbed.
So I said, let's go to a cartoon.
You were kitty captured.
Yeah, but she was telling the truth, and that happened every day. But that sticks in my mind.
And there would be other unforgettable moments on the Circle 4 Club.
Once in a rare opportunity, a carnival or circus would come to town.
Shrine Circus.
Would those people ever make personal appearances on our shows?
They always brought an animal, and the Shrine Clowns were there. And one year they brought a 14-foot anaconda in a big glass aquarium type thing. And the guy from the carnival said, "Oh, he's been in television all over all over the country, he's okay.
Good snake.
They're tame, so he hauls him out. Now, we're away from the kids over on the other part of the studio, and I'm talking about what does this snake eat, where are they from, what, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I hear this sliding across concrete, and it's wham, he grabs the microphone in my hand and grabs the arm.
The guy who's holding the snake grabbed you?
No, yeah, the guy from the carnival, yeah. Now the snake grabbed my hand and chewing away, and the guy finally gets him off, and he puts him back in the thing, and I hide my hand behind my back because it's a little bloody, and the kids, I said, the kids, don't worry about it, that was planned, it was a little joke, just trying to, excitement, and the kid says, do it again, do it again, do it again.
Yeah.
Well, I went to St. Mary's and got a tetanus shot, and I said, you better take that snake back to the carnival, because if he's here, when I get back, I'm going to shoot him first and then you.
Oh, goodness.
He was gone.
It's been estimated that during its time on TV, the Circle 4 Club had welcomed more than 65,000 Golden Triangle children to the Channel 4 studios. And one particular day would be the stuff that urban legends are made of.
In that particular venue, you have to understand the fact that John was the interviewer, cold interviewer of people he did not know. And consequently, he went down the line with a microphone and was interviewing the children. So the parents who were in the audience but not seen on camera would be able to have their child recognized on television. And it just so happened that there was some, there's some off-camera tittering going on. And it's my understanding that John, who was on the set with the children, was asking each child their name, what they wanted to be when they grew up, and that sort of thing. And this young lady was just laughing uncontrollably, and he was having a hard time getting her to tell him what her name was. And so he asked her, honey, what's so distracting? What's the problem? And she was laughing. She said, I can't tell you. And he said, well, you can tell me. Just tell me. And turns an ear to the child, and she says, Leroy. And so Cowboy quickly moves to the next child. This is live television.
She didn't say that.
No, this is live television.
Leroy broke wind.
Oh, did she say that? At any rate, this is live television, so he goes to the next child and says, what's your name? And the grin said it all. My name is Leroy.
Now, what happened next may or may not have actually occurred. It all depends on who you ask.
Leroy made me famous, like I said.
Well, the one thing I think that we gleaned out of that whole thing was the fact that we had a good newsman in the news department who understood an opportunity when he saw one.
What was his name?
Ralph Ramos.
Ralph? Okay.
Ralph Ramos. And Ramos took it to the AP Wire and sent it to some friends of his at NBC, two guys whose name were Huntley and Brinkley. And it just so happened that the network decided that it was worthy of broadcasting live on late television, and so they did so. Leroy became famous.
True story or urban myth? Neither Cowboy John nor Black Bart will tell us for sure. Coming up, how covering the news of Southeast Texas became Channel 4's first priority. And later, when live TV meant live commercials. Area has always generated its share of important news, from Hurricane Carla in 1961 to Rita in 2005. Early on, the commitment was made to broadcast the news live from on the scene, when it was much harder to do than it is today.
We were first in that area to do a live remote, which involved we bought an old bus and converted it. It was one of the saddest looking jobs I ever saw as a vehicle. But nevertheless, we put it in there and got in. The first thing that we did local remote was when the James hearings were held in Beaumont, and they were live remote. That's a very common thing now. It was not then, but it was the biggest thing that had ever happened in that area, I mean, the hearing. And the fact that you could get it I think, sold an awful lot of television sets in those days because you could watch it from where it was happening.
Channel 4's first big news story involved something known as the James Commission hearings. On the surface, the Golden Triangle was a dynamic and all-American looking community. Below the surface was organized gambling, prostitution, and other vices. A young legislator from Austin named Tom James ordered public hearings about crime, and Channel 4 was the only television station to broadcast it live as it happened.
The James Commission investigation affected all of Jefferson County, revealing, I guess, a seamy side of life in Beaumont and Port Arthur that most people had not really come in contact with, a direct or personal contact. But Channel 4 broadcast the hearings live. And we would gather around the television and listen to what was being said. And we heard things that we didn't know about. So it was later we saw Watergate, and later there were the hearings involving Anita Hill, and all these other things are now common. But gathering around the television in early 1960s, I guess that would be what, 1960 or 61, that was a new cultural phenomenon. I was a student at Lamar State College of Technology, and we would go to the student center on purpose and gather around the TV to see what was being said through the James Commission investigation.
The hearings helped put Channel 4's local news on the map. Next, it hired one of the best-known reporters in Southeast Texas, Ralph Ramos.
Ralph was the premier newscaster in this area. He'd been with a couple of television stations. Ralph was the Walter Cronkite of Southeast Texas. And Ralph would go out and get a story, and he would film it himself. He would bring it back. He would edit the film. He would do the story. And he just had a presence on some people on television, they look right into the camera, and you think he's looking directly at you. A very, very believable, very, very credible journalist.
A great newsman. Ralph loved news. He lived news. And again, he was controversial. Some people liked him, some people didn't. That never seemed to make much difference to Ralph one way or another. If it was a news story, he told the news story the way he thought it ought to be told. And he was very important in developing that as a news market all the way down the line. He was a real forerunner in that area.
Ralph was the first news celebrity in the Golden Triangle. I think before Ralph came along, there were news readers who may have made impressions and did a fine job, but Ralph was such a distinctive personality. He had the great ability to write very well for the ear. You know, television news is not like the newspaper. You can't go back and reread a passage. Ralph had the uncanny ability, I think, to write so that we understood what he was saying. He had so many contacts. He had sources scattered throughout Southeast and East Texas. And because of that, I mean, he was really a pioneer journalist in really the early days of local TV news across America.
Ralph built a strong news team. Reporter Ed Robinson was a gifted writer and news anchor who later would leave television to serve as a church minister in Bridge City and Jasper. Bob Buckaloo was a student when Ralph hired him to film and report the news.
I was fortunate enough to have been a senior at Port Neches Groves High School in 1967 when I convinced Ralph to hire me as a news film photographer. And from those days on, Ralph made it very clear that the picture, capturing the news in pictures, was the role of the television journalist. It seems simplistic today, but in those days, that was very visionary thinking.
And Ralph hired the first African-American reporter in Golden Triangle television, Don Pumphrey.
I got the opportunity, and it was my determination to not have gotten the position simply because I was a minority. And so I set out to prove my capability as a true journalist, and I think in the final analysis I achieved that objective. Ralph Ramis, news director, who's got a tremendous history in this area, both in newspaper and television and radio, for that matter, was the news director who hired me. Ed Robinson, who's no longer with us, Bob Buckaloo. Bob taught me a lot about filming. Bob is a tremendous photographer. He's still in the business. And so he was just a great individual to work with and learn from. High points, Janis Joplin interview when she came home for the 10-year class reunion, to many of her classmates' dismay. And there was a need, and as there is today, for journalists to be quite aware of a myriad of issues and things that are facing the public, the world. So you had to have world, national, state knowledge.
The partnership between NBC News and Channel 4 literally brought the entire world into the living rooms of Southeast Texas, and some of the stories we will never forget.
White House Press Secretary Malcolm Kilduff has just announced that President Kennedy died at approximately 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, which is about 35 minutes ago.
After being shot at.
After being shot.
By an unknown assailant.
By an unknown assailant.
During a motorcade drive through downtown Dallas.
During a motorcade drive through downtown Dallas.
I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God.
During the 1960s and 70s, the news on Channel 4 began to reflect a time of social unrest across the country. For example, Channel 4 viewers watched as NBC cameras captured the riots that broke out during the 1968 Chicago Convention. On the local front, crime became a growing concern. Elmer Wayne Henley had been charged with multiple murders in one of Southeast Texas's worst crime sprees.
I never said there were 30 people. I said 24. The name's Junior, not Elmer Wayne Henley. Get your pictures.
It was during that period that Channel 4 began its 10 o'clock newscast with a question.
It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? I don't have any idea who started that. I don't know where it started, and I don't know how we got into it. But we decided at some point that we were going to do that every night at 10 o'clock. And it had never been done in that market or in any of the adjacent markets to us that we knew anything about. So anyhow, we did it. And it's just amazing how something like that can catch on. And again, it did a job that it was supposed to do. People need to know where their children are.
Channel 4 also played a vital role in relaying news from Southeast Texas to the rest of the world.
A huge explosion at a Goodyear chemical plant in Beaumont, Texas, killed 2 workers, injured 10 others, and destroyed a big chunk of the $50 million complex.
The fire spread quickly following a series of explosions covering an area about the size of 2 city blocks. Goodyear officials said the toll of dead and injured could have been much higher, but many of the workers were off for the long Thanksgiving weekend. Fire units from all the surrounding communities were called to the scene, but there was little...
Channel 4 was also a pioneer in presenting nightly local news commentaries.
We really thought we had a voice. We knew we had an audience, and we felt that there were some things that somebody ought to be paying attention to. And those were the kinds of things that we got involved in, sometimes hotly involved, sometimes it was okay. We got a lot of comment on that business, and a lot of people told me what they thought of me in no uncertain terms, and those were the ones that didn't agree with me. But we thought it was a good thing to do, a responsible thing to do. And like when we got into public transportation for Port Arthur, there was none. And it never was or will be a money-making proposition. Port Arthur just simply does not have the wherewithal to support public transportation, but without it, there are people in that community that will never be able to go anywhere. So those were the things that we thought were important and took a stand on them and took some bullets because of, but it's still what we wanted to do.
As the decades unfolded, change was everywhere, from Channel 4 to NBC News.
The Russian cosmonaut discloses that he was ejected from his spaceship and floated to Earth in a parachute.
The picture you're looking at right now is being broadcast to the United States and to Europe simultaneously via the RCA communication satellite called Relay.
As Lyndon Johnson and his family prepare to leave the White House, it is an opportune time to talk with some members of the Johnson staff who have been particularly close to the family.
And in the second half of this hour, we'll be talking with Special Watergate Prosecutor Leon Jaworski in Washington.
I'm Jim Hartz in the NBC News Center. And later in the hour, we'll be switching to Washington, where our guest, the president of the young woman with me this morning is someone I'd like you to meet very much. She is Jane Pauley, who is fast becoming familiar to Chicagoans. Jane co-anchors the evening news here and has been doing that for the last 3 months, and she is going to be a co-host this morning on the Today Show's Salute to Illinois. Good morning.
I'm Tom Brokaw here with Jane Pauley on the Today program. Not a lot of surprises in the next 60 minutes here.
The 1960s saw another change at Channel 4.
We were the first ones to do color. NBC was the first network to go color, so as an NBC affiliate, we sort of followed in their footsteps. Our first color camera was a one camera. The color cameras were much more expensive than the black and white camera. So our first step was to get a color camera. And that was a whole new game. You had to change the lighting had to be much more intense, a lot more than it is now. The cameras are much more sensitive, but color cameras took an awful lot of light. So, and the makeup and the people on camera would get hot and sweaty, and so it was a difficult problem to adjust from one to the other because there was quite a bit of change, and you had to worry about color coordinated in your clothing because you could put anything on in black and white, and if it looked, and in color you also had to stay away from white. Bright whites caused problems for color, and reds caused problems. They didn't reproduce right.
Color was a big deal, but it wasn't the miracle that television was. Color was great, wonderful, magnificent, but television itself was the real miracle.
Today, many of the innovations we take for granted on Channel 4 in 2007 have their roots from a time when TV news was literally being invented. Up next, whether you like them or not, TV commercials have been a part of Channel 4's history too.
A lot has changed in the past 50 years, but our commitment to Southeast Texas has stayed the same.
Whether you love them or hate them, TV commercials play an important part in keeping free TV free. Commercials pay the bills at a TV station, and some of them have been as entertaining as the shows they sponsor. Now, how many of these commercials do you remember?
Oh, Debbie, really? Then it says no new cavities. Golly, what a difference that Crest toothpaste has made.
You get a quick tan with QT, a double tan, you see.
Hey, how about a movie tonight, huh?
Wow, what's that aftershave you're wearing?
New High Karate Aftershave is so powerful, it drives women right out of their minds. That's why we have to put instructions on self-defense in every package. High Karate, the brisk splash-on aftershave that smooths.
Oh, what a beautiful day for Frankenberry, the world's super sweet new cereal.
Phooey! Here's the world's super sweet new cereal called Chocula.
Just out and just wonderful, the 1957 Chevrolet. There's fresh new design, plus new fuel injection engines that deliver up to 283 horsepower.
Oh, Mrs. Olson, I just can't make good coffee.
Julie, good coffee is no problem with Folgers.
Picnic time. Pickle, hot dog, potato chips.
Uh-oh.
What's wrong?
Once you've tried Pringles' newfangled potato chips, dear, other potato chips just don't stack up.
Huh?
Please don't squeeze the Charmin in this pour. Oh, but Charmin is so soft. I can't resist it. Mr. Whipple!
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it.
There's nobody here but us monkeys.
Make friends with Kool-Aid. Make Kool-Aid with friends. For fruit that never ends.
But in the early days of Channel 4, most commercials were done live.
When you own this wonderful new Westinghouse refrigerator, it always keeps itself frost-free. Yes. Somebody's playing games. Well, ordinarily, it's completely automatic.
One of my sponsors was Texas Coffee Company. And I would sit at the desk and say, you know, if you want coffee, you've got to have this. I'd go on about how great it was. Well, Johnny Stevens put Coke in the cup. And of course, it's dark, I didn't know. So I took a spoonful of sugar. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I took, and it went in the cup, and it just started going. And try it at home sometime a little. We could not stop the foam, and we got to laughing so hard, I couldn't continue. Just had to put a record on. It was wild. I was doing a commercial for the Fair Store, and it was the first time they had the creases that didn't come out. So I said to Eddie, get a bucket in one of those wash tubs, and I'm gonna stand in it in those slacks, but shoot me from here up. And then when I talk about the crease being in it, even if they get wet, I'm gonna sit down in this bucket, or not a bucket, it was a wash tub. And then when I get up, I'll look at the crease. So what I didn't know was I'm standing there, and John Stevens, and I'm not sure who else, had these bags of ice. And while I'm talking, they're pouring it's alive, so I can't go, what are you doing, So I'm saying, these are the best slacks, and watch what happens when I sit down. Well, I gotta tell you, that's cold. Real cold. And again, we broke up. And, that was just live TV. The creases stayed in the pan.
Oh, by the way, remember that story about Leroy and the Cowboy John show? There's some question about whether it actually happened. So I asked some people who might have some direct knowledge about it.
Everybody that knows anything about Channel 4 in the 50s and 60s in the Circle 4 Club knows about Leroy. The statement that Leroy made, well, actually, the statement that his friend said about Leroy, that was a great innovation in the world of television.
Leroy?
Leroy?
Leroy.
Yeah.
Leroy who?
I don't remember Leroy.
Well, that's good enough.
And I directed a lot of the Circle 4 clubs, but I don't remember Leroy.
No, I think we're just going to have to let Leroy rest in peace.
Oh, well, I guess we'll never know for sure. And now the current team here at Channel 4 reflect on where we've been, where we're going, and what it means to be an integral part of the community.
I think it's amazing to start off, as well as being a broadcaster, but having like a studio that for live wrestling and the Cowboy John shows and all the stories that you hear of the use of that facility and just the talent that came in for those purposes is just absolutely amazing.
Well, you know, I did my internship at Channel 4 down in Port Arthur in the old days in the old building, and it had probably seen its day when I started there in the 90s, but I mostly remember my dad telling stories, you know, about watching the old wrestling down at the old studio down in Port Arthur, and, you know, there's just so many memories in that old building.
The number of people that have come through this market and come to the station is just amazing. This is a great place to be. Yeah, well, you know, I came from a long time ago, a market in California, Bakersfield, that had a lot of country music roots. And Port Arthur has a lot of music roots too, with Janis Joplin and all. And I've been so impressed to find out the history about that and the history of this region as far as music goes. It's really very rich.
I just have a passion of being a part of the community in which I live in. This is home for me, you know, here in, I didn't grow up in Beaumont, but I live here now. And as a result, I want to be a part of the place in which I live. And I think that the station is a reflection of that. When you look at the people that we have and their commitment to the community and involvement in community projects, it's amazing. I mean, that's the same responsibility that they take, is to be a part of the improvement of the community in which we live.
I think the more our staff connects themselves to the community, either through public service, through children, through religious connections, through just the bare bones interacting within the community, I think the better job we do covering the community.
Well, I think what Channel 4 brings to the equation and brings to the market is what it has for the entire 50 years it's been here, and that is a focus on local news, a focus on community, a focus on what's important to the people around here. And yes, the tools have changed over the years. We no longer have film, we have videotape, and in some cases nonlinear, but the stories are still the same that we're telling about people.
I think of Hometown News as serving all of Southeast Texas. No matter where you're at, we're going to bring you the news that affects you, the viewer, you, the resident. Part of being a hometown local news station is also being an advocate for the community. We send our kids to the local schools, we pay taxes here locally, and what we thoroughly believe in is being and caring for our community. So when it grows and when it does well, we do well.
Well, the best thing is I get to deliver sports right here in the hometown that I grew up in. That's probably the biggest impact for me, and getting to interview the kids. And, you know, it was a big deal when you were in high school and got to be on TV. So that means a lot to me, to bring the community and get the kids involved in it.
With the changes that are coming around the corner here over the next 5 to 10 years, to be able to be a witness to this and to be able to be advocates for our viewers when all this change is happening, I think it's going to be a crucial time for local news, and we look forward to being part of it.
Well, for me, this is an exciting time to be at Channel 4. 50 years, I mean, that's incredible. And what a time to be here from the standpoint of the way technology is changing. I mean, high definition, non-linear, all of these changes in the technology that we use can only make our ability to tell stories better and make our ability to reach the community even better.
The last 5 years I've been here, we've seen significant changes, and it isn't just with Channel 4, but it's within the industry as well. It is now a multifaceted news gathering operation where we don't just work for the 5, for the 6, for the 10, or for the morning show. We also work for internet and websites, so it brings a new immediacy to news gathering here locally.
If you think about it, 50 years ago, it was all analog, really up until today, in essence. And now we're getting ready to go to a digital platform. And just what that means to the television station and to the consumer is that not only will it be a good picture, but you'll be able to receive us in so many other platforms. When looking at the opportunities that we have with our broadband and digital platform, you know, just the various means that we have to touch the community with our journalists and meteorologists and so forth.
Well, I mean, I remember 10, 15 years ago talking about, oh, one day we'll be able to come in and you won't even have to be at home to watch something that's coming on at 7 o'clock or the news at 6. You'll just be able to click on it and watch it instantaneously.
Channel 4 that Southeast Texas has come to know is only going to get better with time. As we venture into high def, as we continue to improve our online product, I think Southeast Texans will have a new appreciation for not only the work we do, but the work our competitors do in the market as well.
Just the opportunities in the next 50 years, it's just, you know, in a way we really can't, I mean, I couldn't sit here today and tell you what it's going to be like 50 years from now. Just as, that was the same point 50 years ago. But to be in a position to be a part of that, and to be a part of Southeast Texas is just it's just an amazing opportunity.
When we return, some final thoughts on the history of Channel 4. So there you have it, from fuzzy black and white images to high-definition TV. From weather maps drawn on a blackboard to state-of-the-art satellite images. From Uncle Milty to Steve Carell. But through it all, one thing remains the same. Channel 4 is a reflection of our lives in Southeast Texas. Our triumphs, our struggles, our hopes, and our dreams. We've been here for the first 50, and what a ride it's been. Can you imagine what the next 50 years will be like? Well, whatever it is, I'll bet that one way or another, Channel 4 will be a part of it. I'm Dana Malasaw. For all of us here at KBTV4, good night.